Wolf attacks cat, but when they see what the dog does next, they're speechless. Nestled amidst the towering peaks of the Rocky Mountains, the small town of Aspen Creek exuded a charm that was both rustic and welcoming. Life moved at a slower pace here, where the air was crisp and clean, the streets lined with quaint houses and friendly faces. In the heart of this idyllic community lived the Miller family, their home a haven of warmth and laughter. Their beloved golden retriever, Max, was a fixture in the neighborhood, his wagging tail and friendly demeanor a source of joy for all who crossed his path. Max, with his golden fur and gentle eyes, embodied the spirit of Aspen Creek. He was loyal, protective, and always eager to please, his playful antics bringing smiles to the faces of children and adults alike. He was a constant companion to the Miller children, joining them on their adventures through the surrounding woods, his boundless energy a match for their youthful exuberance. In stark contrast to Max's exuberant personality was Cleo, a Siamese cat with an air of aloof independence. Cleo belonged to no one, choosing instead to roam the neighborhood freely, her sleek form a shadow that flitted through gardens and across rooftops. Cleo, with her piercing blue eyes and aristocratic demeanor, was a creature of mystery. She accepted affection on her own terms, her purrs a rare and precious reward for those who earned her trust. She was a feline enigma, a symbol of the wild spirit that still lingered in the heart of Aspen Creek. Despite their contrasting personalities, an unlikely bond began to form between Max and Cleo. Their initial encounters were marked by wary curiosity, a cautious dance of sniffing and circling, each assessing the other's intentions. Max, with his innate friendliness, was eager to make friends with the aloof feline. He would often approach Cleo with a wagging tail and a playful bow, inviting her to join his games. Cleo, however, remained aloof, her response a disdainful flick of her tail or a haughty glare. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, a grudging respect began to develop between them. Max, sensing Cleo's independent spirit, learned to give her space, his playful advances replaced by a respectful distance. Cleo, in turn, began to tolerate Max's presence, her aloofness softening as she observed his gentle nature and playful antics. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the town, Max and Cleo found themselves sharing a sunny spot on the Miller's porch. Max, curled up in a ball, dozed peacefully, his tail thumping softly against the wooden floor. Cleo, perched on the railing, bathed in the warm sunlight, her eyes half closed in contentment. A subtle shift occurred in that shared moment of peace. The animosity that had once defined their relationship began to melt away, replaced by a sense of companionship, an unspoken understanding that transcended their differences. An unlikely friendship was blossoming, a testament to the unexpected connections that can form in the heart of a small town. A sense of unease settled over Aspen Creek, a subtle shift in the atmosphere that disrupted the town's usual tranquility. Whispers of a lone wolf, sighted in the outskirts of the community, spread like wildfire, casting a shadow of fear over the peaceful haven. The wolf, a magnificent creature with a coat of silver gray and eyes that gleamed with a primal intensity, had been driven from its pack, forced to fend for itself in unfamiliar territory. It roamed the surrounding hills, its hunger gnawing at its belly, its loneliness a constant companion. The townsfolk, accustomed to the gentle rhythms of nature, were unsettled by the wolf's presence. They kept their pets indoors, their children close, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the elusive predator. The wolf, a symbol of the wild, had encroached upon their peaceful existence, a reminder of the untamed forces that still lurked beyond the boundaries of their civilized world. Max, with his heightened senses, felt the shift in the atmosphere. He would often pause during his walks with the Miller children, his ears twitching, his nose testing the air for any unfamiliar scent. He sensed the presence of the wolf, its wildness a stark contrast to the domesticated comfort of his life in Aspen Creek. Cleo, with her innate feline intuition, also sensed the presence of the predator. She became more cautious in her wanderings, her movements more stealthy, her senses alert to any sign of danger. The wolf, a creature of the same wild instincts that coursed through her veins, represented a threat that she could not ignore. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the town, Cleo ventured out, her curiosity overcoming her caution. She explored the alleyways and backyards, her senses heightened, her body a symphony of grace and agility. Unbeknownst to her, the wolf, driven by desperation and hunger, had also ventured closer to the town. It lurked in the shadows, its eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger, its senses focused on the unsuspecting feline. Cleo, unaware of the danger lurking nearby, continued her exploration, her senses lulled by the familiar sights and sounds of her territory. She rounded a corner, her path leading her towards a secluded alleyway, a haven of shadows and silence. The wolf, sensing its opportunity, emerged from the darkness, its form a silent shadow against the fading light. It stalked Cleo, its movements fluid and predatory, its eyes fixed on its unsuspecting prey. Cleo, her senses finally alerted to the danger, turned her head, her eyes widening in fear as she met the wolf's intense gaze. The wolf, its jaws parted in a silent snarl, lunged forward, its powerful body a blur of motion. Cleo, her instincts kicking in, let out a terrified hiss, her body arching, her claws extended. But the wolf, driven by hunger and desperation, was relentless. It closed in on Cleo, its jaws snapping, its teeth bared, its intent clear. Just as the wolf was about to pounce, a blur of golden fur erupted from the shadows, a bark of defiance echoing through the quiet alleyway. Max, his protective instincts overriding any fear, had come to Cleo's rescue. Max, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and adrenaline, launched himself at the wolf, his powerful body a blur of golden fur. He snarled, his teeth bared, his bark a defiant challenge to the predator that threatened his friend. The wolf, surprised by the sudden intervention, turned its attention to the new threat. Its eyes narrowed, its lips curled back in a snarl, its powerful jaws snapping shut just inches from Max's face. The two animals clashed, their bodies a whirlwind of fur and fangs, their growls and snarls echoing through the quiet alleyway. Max, despite his smaller size, fought with a ferocity born of loyalty and protectiveness. He snapped at the wolf's flanks, his teeth grazing its thick fur, his agility allowing him to dodge the wolf's snapping jaws. The wolf, larger and more powerful, relied on its brute strength, attempting to overpower Max with its sheer size. It lunged and snapped, its claws raking Max's fur, leaving bloody marks on his golden coat. But Max, fueled by adrenaline and his unwavering determination to protect Cleo, refused to back down. He weaved and dodged, his barks echoing through the night, his every move a testament to his loyalty and courage. Cleo, her initial fear giving way to a sense of awe, watched the battle unfold, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never witnessed such a display of bravery, such selfless devotion. Max, the playful golden retriever, had transformed into a fierce protector, risking his own life to defend her. The battle raged on, the two animals locked in a desperate struggle for dominance. Max, despite his valiant efforts, began to tire, his movements becoming slower, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The wolf, sensing its advantage, pressed its attack, its jaws snapping closer, its claws raking deeper. Just as the wolf was about to land a decisive blow, Max, with a burst of adrenaline, managed to wriggle free. He lunged at the wolf's exposed flank, his teeth sinking into its thick fur. The wolf yelped in pain, its grip loosening, its attention momentarily diverted. Max seized the opportunity, his barks turning into a series of ferocious growls as he renewed his attack. He bit and snarled, his body a whirlwind of motion, his determination unwavering. The wolf, surprised by Max's renewed aggression and weakened by its injuries, began to falter. It retreated a few steps, its eyes filled with a mixture of pain and confusion. Max, sensing his advantage, pressed forward, his barks echoing through the night, his presence a formidable barrier between the wolf and Cleo. The wolf, realizing that it was outmatched, turned and fled, disappearing into the shadows, its howls of frustration echoing through the quiet town. Max, his body battered and bruised, stood panting, his gaze fixed on the retreating form of the predator, his loyalty and courage having saved the day. The alleyway, once a scene of fierce struggle, fell silent. Max, his breath coming in ragged gasps, stood guard over Cleo, his body bearing the marks of his valiant defense. Scratches crisscrossed his golden fur, blood oozing from a gash on his shoulder, and his usually playful eyes held a weariness that spoke of the toll the battle had taken. Cleo, her initial fear replaced by a wave of gratitude and concern, approached Max cautiously. She nuzzled his injured leg, her purrs a soft balm against his wounds. Her aloofness, her usual disdain for canine companionship, melted away in the face of his selfless act of bravery. Max, despite his pain, wagged his tail weakly, his eyes filled with a gentle warmth as he acknowledged Cleo's gratitude. In that shared moment of vulnerability, their bond deepened, their unlikely friendship forged in the fires of adversity. The Millers, alerted by the commotion, rushed out of their house, their hearts pounding with fear as they searched for their beloved dog. They found Max and Cleo huddled together in the alleyway, the scene illuminated by the dim glow of a street lamp. Relief washed over them as they saw Max alive, but their concern deepened as they noticed his injuries. They scooped him up, his whimpers echoing their own anxieties, and rushed him back to their home, their minds filled with worry and gratitude for his bravery. The next morning, they took Max to the local veterinarian, Dr. Emily Carter, a kind and compassionate woman with a deep love for animals. Dr. Carter examined Max's wounds, her brow furrowed with concern as she cleaned and stitched the gashes, her gentle touch soothing his pain. The Millers, their faces etched with worry, recounted the events of the previous night, their voices filled with a mixture of pride and fear. Dr. Carter listened intently, her heart touched by Max's courage and Cleo's unexpected display of affection. "Max is a very brave dog," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "He risked his own life to protect Cleo. It's a testament to the incredible bond that can exist between animals." The Millers nodded, their hearts swelling with pride for their loyal companion. But their conversation soon turned to the wolf, its presence still a source of unease in the community. "What do you think will happen to the wolf?" Mrs. Miller asked, her voice laced with concern. Dr. Carter sighed, her expression thoughtful. "It's hard to say," she replied. "Wolves are solitary creatures, driven by instinct and survival. It's likely it will move on, seeking a new territory where it can hunt and thrive." But a shadow of doubt lingered in her eyes. She knew that the wolf's presence in Aspen Creek had stirred a mix of fear and fascination amongst the townsfolk. Some saw it as a threat, a danger to their pets and their children. Others saw it as a symbol of the wild, a reminder of the untamed beauty that surrounded their peaceful community. The fate of the wolf, like the scars on Max's body, remained an open wound, a reminder of the delicate balance between humans and the wild, a balance that had been disrupted by the predator's unexpected arrival. The Millers, their concern for the wolf growing, found themselves drawn to Dr. Carter's veterinary clinic more often than usual. Under the guise of checking on Max's healing progress, they would engage Dr. Carter in conversations about the wolf, its behavior, and its potential impact on the community. Dr. Carter, with her extensive knowledge of wildlife and her compassionate nature, became a valuable source of information and reassurance. She shared stories of wolves she had encountered in her years of practice, emphasizing their intelligence, their social structures, and their vital role in the ecosystem. She explained that the wolf sighted in Aspen Creek was likely a lone individual, perhaps driven from its pack due to injury or a challenge for dominance. It was now forced to navigate a new territory, to hunt and survive on its own. A daunting task for a creature accustomed to the support and cooperation of a pack. Wolves are incredibly resilient animals, Dr. Carter explained, but they also face many challenges, especially when they are alone. They have to adapt to new environments, find new sources of food, and avoid conflicts with humans and other predators. The Millers, their understanding of the wolf's plight deepening, felt a growing sense of empathy for the creature. They imagined its loneliness, its struggle for survival, its vulnerability in a world that seemed increasingly hostile. Their conversations with Dr. Carter also shed light on the complex relationship between humans and wolves. She explained that wolves had long been feared and persecuted, their presence often seen as a threat to livestock and human safety. But she also emphasized their importance in maintaining the balance of the ecosystem, their role as apex predators keeping prey populations in check and ensuring the health of the environment. Wolves are an essential part of the natural world, Dr. Carter explained. They play a vital role in maintaining the delicate balance of the ecosystem. Without them, the entire food chain can be disrupted, leading to unforeseen consequences. The Millers, their perspectives broadened by Dr. Carter's insights, began to see the wolf not just as a fearsome predator, but as a creature deserving of respect and understanding. They realized that its presence in Aspen Creek, though unsettling, was a reminder of the wildness that still existed beyond the boundaries of their civilized world, a wildness that deserved to be protected. However, not everyone in Aspen Creek shared the Millers' growing empathy for the wolf. Jake Reynolds, a local hunter known for his rugged individualism and his deep-rooted connection to the land, saw the wolf as a threat, a danger to the community and its way of life. Jake, with his weathered face and calloused hands, embodied the spirit of the frontier, a man who relied on his skills and his knowledge of the wilderness to survive. He had spent his life hunting and trapping, providing for his family and protecting his livestock from predators. The arrival of the wolf in Aspen Creek had stirred a primal fear within him, a fear for the safety of his family, his livelihood, and the delicate balance of the community he held dear. He saw the wolf as an intruder, a disruptor of the peace, a creature that needed to be eliminated before it caused any harm. The contrasting perspectives on the wolf's presence created a tension within Aspen Creek, a division between those who saw it as a threat and those who saw it as a symbol of the wild, a reminder of the untamed beauty that surrounded their peaceful community. The fate of the wolf, like the scars on Max's body, remained an open wound, a symbol of the complex relationship between humans and the wild, a relationship that was about to be tested in ways no one could have foreseen. One stormy night, the wind howled through Aspen Creek, rattling windows and whipping branches against rooftops. Rain lashed against the Millers' house, a relentless torrent that mirrored the turmoil brewing within their hearts. Max, his injuries healed but his spirit still bearing the scars of his encounter with the wolf, lay restless in his bed by the fireplace. The storm's fury seemed to echo the wolf's own struggle for survival, its howls a mournful symphony that resonated with Max's empathetic soul. Suddenly, a different sound pierced through the storm's cacophony, a whimper, faint and desperate, carried on the wind from the direction of the old barn behind the house. Max's ears perked up, his body tensing as he recognized the sound. It was the wolf, its cries a plea for help, a desperate cry for shelter from the storm's wrath. Max, torn between his loyalty to his family and his growing empathy for the wolf, whined softly, his eyes pleading with the Millers for permission to investigate. Mr. Miller, sensing his dog's distress, knelt beside him, his hand gently stroking Max's fur. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, his voice a calming presence amidst the storm's fury. "What do you hear?" Max, unable to contain his concern, barked softly, his gaze fixed on the barn door, his body trembling with a mix of fear and determination. The Millers, their curiosity piqued, exchanged worried glances. "Do you think it's the wolf?" Mrs. Miller asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Miller nodded, his expression grim. "It's possible," he replied. The storm must have driven it to seek shelter. A silence fell over the room, the only sound the relentless pounding of the rain against the windows. Max, his anxiety growing, whined again, his body straining against Mr. Miller's restraining hand. The Millers, their hearts filled with conflicting emotions, knew they had a difficult decision to make. Should they ignore the wolf's cries, leaving it to fend for itself in the storm? Or should they risk their own safety and possibly the safety of their community by offering it shelter? Max, sensing their hesitation, nudged Mr. Miller's hand with his nose, his eyes pleading for understanding. He couldn't bear the thought of the wolf suffering, alone and injured in the storm's fury. His compassionate heart, his innate loyalty, extended beyond the boundaries of his human family, encompassing the creature that had once been his enemy. Mr. Miller, his own heart touched by Max's empathy, looked at his wife, his eyes seeking her approval. Mrs. Miller, her concern for Max battling with her fear of the wolf, hesitated for a moment. Then, with a deep breath, she nodded, her trust in Max's instincts overriding her apprehension. "Go on, boy," Mr. Miller whispered, releasing his hold on Max's collar. "See what you can do." Max, his tail wagging with gratitude and determination, bounded towards the barn door, his barks echoing through the stormy night, a beacon of hope for the creature seeking refuge within. Max pushed open the barn door, the hinges groaning in protest against the wind's fury. The interior of the barn was dark, the only light filtering through the cracks in the wooden walls. The air was thick with the scent of hay and dust, mingled with the sharp tang of the wolf's fear. Max, his senses heightened, cautiously navigated the maze of farm equipment and bales of hay, his eyes searching for the source of the whimpering sounds. He found the wolf huddled in a corner, its body shivering, its fur matted with rain and blood. The wolf, its usual fierceness replaced by a vulnerability that mirrored Max's own injuries from their previous encounter, looked up at Max with wary eyes. It whimpered softly, its tail tucked between its legs, its body trembling with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. Max, his heart filled with compassion, approached the wolf slowly, his tail wagging gently, his body language conveying reassurance and friendship. He nudged the wolf gently with his nose, his soft whimpers echoing the wolf's own cries. The wolf, surprised by Max's gentle approach, tentatively licked Max's nose, its rough tongue a gesture of gratitude and trust. Max, in response, licked the wolf's fur, his warm tongue soothing the wounds inflicted by the storm and the harsh realities of its solitary existence. A silent understanding passed between the two animals, a bond forged in shared vulnerability and a mutual recognition of their primal instincts. Max, the domesticated dog, and the wolf, the wild predator, found common ground in their shared experience of pain and loneliness. Max, driven by his compassionate nature, decided to help the wolf. He snuck out of the house each night, carrying scraps of food from the Miller's kitchen to the barn. He would spend hours with the wolf, their silent companionship a source of comfort for both of them. The wolf, his strength slowly returning, began to trust Max implicitly. It would greet him with a wag of its tail, its eyes filled with gratitude and affection. The barn, once a place of fear and isolation, became a sanctuary, a haven where the wolf could heal and find solace in the company of its unlikely friend. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Max and the wolf deepened. They would play together in the barn, their playful chases and mock fights a release of pent-up energy and a celebration of their newfound friendship. Max, despite his loyalty to his human family, found himself drawn to the wolf's wild spirit, its connection to the untamed world that existed beyond the boundaries of Aspen Creek. The wolf, in turn, found comfort in Max's gentle nature, his loyalty and his unwavering friendship. Their unlikely bond, a testament to the power of compassion and understanding, was a beacon of hope in a world often divided by fear and prejudice. It was a reminder that even the most unlikely of friendships could blossom, bridging the gap between the domesticated and the wild, the tame and the untamed. The Millers, though initially unaware of Max's nightly excursions to the barn, began to notice a change in their beloved dog. He was more restless than usual, his sleep often interrupted by whimpers and soft barks. His appetite had decreased, and he seemed preoccupied, his gaze often drifting towards the old barn behind their house. One evening, as Mr. Miller was closing up the barn for the night, he noticed a flash of silver-gray fur disappearing into the shadows. His heart pounded in his chest as he recognized the unmistakable form of the wolf. He rushed back to the house, his mind racing with a mix of fear and concern. He shared his discovery with his wife, their conversation filled with apprehension and uncertainty. They knew that the wolf's presence in their barn posed a potential threat, not only to their family but to the entire community. "We have to do something," Mrs. Miller said, her voice laced with worry. "We can't just let the wolf stay in the barn. What if it attacks someone?" Mr. Miller nodded, his expression grim. "I know," he replied, "but what can we do? We can't just chase it away. It's injured and vulnerable." Their conversation was interrupted by Max's insistent barking at the back door. He whined and pawed at the door, his eagerness to go outside evident. The Millers exchanged a knowing glance. They realized that Max was aware of the wolf's presence, that he had been visiting it in secret. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over them. They were proud of Max's compassion, his willingness to help a creature in need, even one that had once been his enemy. But they were also terrified of the potential consequences, the risk that the wolf might pose to their family and their community. They decided to confront Max, their voices gentle but firm. They questioned him about his nightly visits to the barn, their hearts sinking as he confirmed their suspicions. Max, sensing their disapproval, lowered his head, his tail tucked between his legs, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and defiance. The Millers, their love for Max unwavering, struggled with the knowledge of his secret friendship with the wolf. They knew they had a difficult choice to make, a choice that could have far-reaching consequences for both their beloved dog and the creature he had chosen to protect. The revelation of Max's bond with the wolf ignited a heated debate within the Miller family. Mr. Miller, a practical man with a deep sense of responsibility for his family's safety, argued that the wolf posed a threat and needed to be removed from their property. Mrs. Miller, her heart touched by Max's compassion and the wolf's vulnerability, hesitated, torn between her love for her dog and her concern for the wild creature. The children, Emily and Ben, were captivated by the story of Max's friendship with the wolf. They pleaded with their parents to protect the wolf, their young minds filled with images of the unlikely companions playing together in the barn. The debate raged for days, the tension within the Miller household growing with each passing hour. Max, sensing the conflict, became increasingly anxious, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced by a quiet apprehension. He would often sneak glances at the barn, his ears twitching at the slightest sound, his heart filled with worry for his friend. Meanwhile, news of the wolf's presence in the Miller's barn reached the ears of Jake Reynolds. His fears confirmed, he felt a surge of determination to eliminate the threat, to protect his community from the perceived danger. He armed himself with his rifle, his weathered face set in a grim expression, his eyes filled with a resolve that brooked no opposition. He approached the Miller's house, his footsteps heavy on the gravel driveway, his presence casting a shadow over the peaceful home. The Millers, alerted by the sound of Jake's truck, met him at the door, their faces etched with a mixture of apprehension and defiance. Jake, his voice gruff but firm, declared his intention to hunt the wolf, his words echoing the fear that had gripped the community. "I'm sorry, folks," he said, his eyes fixed on the barn, "but that wolf is a danger to us all. It needs to be dealt with before it causes any harm." The Millers, their hearts pounding in their chests, tried to reason with Jake, explaining Max's bond with the wolf, emphasizing its vulnerability and its need for shelter. But Jake, his mindset, remained unmoved. "I appreciate your concern," he replied, But I can't take that risk. The safety of our community comes first. He raised his rifle, his finger tightening on the trigger, his gaze fixed on the barn door. Max, sensing the impending danger, let out a bark of warning, his body straining against the miller's restraining hands. With a sudden burst of energy, Max broke free from their grasp and charged towards the barn, his barks echoing through the quiet evening air. He reached the barn door just as Jake fired a shot, the bullet whizzing past Max's head, splintering the wood. The wolf, startled by the gunshot, emerged from the barn, its eyes wide with fear, his body trembling. Jake, his rifle raised, prepared to fire again, but Max, in a selfless act of bravery, leaped in front of the wolf, his body shielding his friend from the deadly bullet. A second shot rang out, the sound echoing through the stillness of the evening. Max yelped in pain, his body crumpling to the ground, his golden fur stained with blood. The Millers, their hearts filled with horror, rushed towards their beloved dog, their cries of anguish mingling with the wolf's mournful howls. The sight of Max, their beloved companion, lying injured on the ground, sent a wave of grief and anger through the Millers. Mrs. Miller cradled Max's head in her lap, her tears falling onto his fur, her sobs echoing through the stillness of the evening. Mr. Miller, his face pale with shock, knelt beside his wife, his hand gently stroking Max's back, his voice choked with emotion. Emily and Ben, their young eyes filled with tears, knelt beside their parents, their hands reaching out to touch Max's fur, their hearts breaking at the sight of their beloved dog suffering. Jake Reynolds, his rifle lowered, stood frozen in place, his face etched with a mixture of shock and regret. He had not intended to harm Max, his focus solely on eliminating the perceived threat of the wolf. But in his haste, in his fear-driven determination, he had inflicted pain on an innocent creature, a creature that had shown nothing but loyalty and compassion. The wolf, its eyes filled with a mixture of fear and gratitude, stood protectively over Max, its mournful howls echoing the Miller's grief. It had witnessed Max's selfless act of bravery, his willingness to sacrifice his own life to protect his unlikely friend. The sound of sirens pierced the quiet evening, the flashing lights of emergency vehicles illuminating the scene. Dr. Carter, alerted by the commotion, arrived, her face etched with concern as she rushed towards Max, her medical bag in hand. She examined Max's wounds, her brow furrowed with concentration as she worked to stabilize his condition. The Millers, their hopes clinging to every movement of her hands, watched with bated breath, their prayers a silent plea for Max's survival. News of the incident spread through Aspen Creek like wildfire, the community rallying around the Millers, their hearts touched by Max's bravery and the wolf's unexpected display of loyalty. Neighbors brought food and offered their support, their presence a testament to the strong bonds that united the small town. Max, his condition stabilized but his recovery uncertain, was transported to Dr. Carter's clinic, where he received round-the-clock care. The Millers, their vigil by his bedside unwavering, refused to leave his side, their love and hope fueling his fight for survival. The wolf, its presence no longer seen as a threat, was allowed to remain in the Miller's barn, its mournful howls a constant reminder of Max's sacrifice. The community, their perspectives shifted by the events, began to see the wolf not as a fearsome predator, but as a creature capable of loyalty and compassion, a creature that had been touched by the kindness of a dog named Max. Days turned into weeks, and Max, with the Miller's unwavering love and Dr. Carter's expert care, slowly began to recover. His wounds healed, his strength returned, and his playful spirit re-emerged, bringing joy back into the Miller household. The wolf, its injuries also healed, remained in the barn, its bond with Max deepening with each passing day. They would play together in the fields, their joyful chases and playful wrestling matches a testament to their unlikely friendship. One crisp autumn morning, as the sun painted the mountains in hues of gold and crimson, the Millers, with heavy hearts but a deep sense of gratitude, decided to release the wolf back into the wild. They knew that it belonged in the wilderness, that its true home was amongst the towering peaks and the whispering pines. They gathered in the field behind the barn, Max by their side, his tail wagging gently, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. The wolf, sensing the impending farewell, nuzzled Max, its mournful howls echoing through the valley, a final goodbye to its loyal friend. With a final glance at the Millers, the wolf turned and disappeared into the forest, its silver-gray coat blending seamlessly with the shadows, its howls fading into the distance. Max, his head held high, watched his friend depart, his heart filled with a bittersweet mixture of loss and pride. The Millers, their eyes filled with tears, embraced Max, their love for their brave dog deepened by his selfless act of compassion. They knew that Max's legacy would live on in Aspen Creek, a reminder of the enduring power of friendship, the resilience of the human spirit, and the unexpected connections that can form between humans and animals.